Born from the ashes of a defeated empire, the Weimar Republic represented Germany's first attempt at democracy. But this fragile system, burdened by the humiliating terms of the Treaty of Versailles, economic collapse, and deep political divisions, was doomed from the start. How did this seemingly progressive republic fall so quickly into chaos? And how did its downfall provide the perfect conditions for Adolf Hitler's rise to power? Join us as we explore the turbulent history of the Weimar Republic, a period that set the stage for one of the darkest chapters in human history. How did the Weimar Republic begin? The Weimar Republic was established in the chaotic days following World War I. On November 9, 1918, known as the Day of Destiny in German history, Emperor Wilhelm II abdicated and fled to the Netherlands. On the same day, Chancellor Maximilian, Prince of Baden, also resigned and was succeeded by Friedrich Ebert, leader of the Social Democratic Party of Germany, SPD. The SPD has been the largest political party in Germany since 1913. Although Ebert initially aimed to establish a constitutional monarchy for Germany, his colleague, Philipp Scheidemann, unilaterally declared the establishment of a republic from the balcony of the Reichstag building. Scheidemann's sudden action was carried out without the consent of Ebert or the SPD leadership. Within the SPD, a faction opposing the war emerged, viewing it as an unjust imperialist war. This faction opposed the SPD's viewpoint, believing that revolutionary methods should be used to improve the living conditions of the working class. This difference in perspective led to division within the SPD and the emergence of the Spartacus League. In this turbulent context, on November 9th in Berlin, Karl Liebknecht, one of the leaders of the Spartacus League, declared the establishment of a communist republic directly challenging the young government of Ebert and Scheidemann. However, Ebert and the SPD quickly formed an alliance with the military and used force to suppress the Spartacus uprising in the winter of 1918 to 1919. The revolution was crushed, and Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, key leaders of the newly formed Communist Party of Germany, KPD, were assassinated by a right-wing paramilitary group called the Freikorps in January 1919. The repression created a deep rift between the two main left-wing parties, the SPD and the KPD. This division significantly weakened the left-wing faction in Germany, preventing them from forming a united front against the rise of fascism. In 1919, the KPD became increasingly radical, deviating from the original ideals of Liebknecht and Luxemburg. The division and weakening of the left-wing faction created favorable conditions for the rise of fascism in Germany. In February 1919, the German National Assembly convened in Weimar and elected Friedrich Ebert as the president of the young republic. However, it was not until August 1919, after the Weimar Constitution was passed, that the Weimar Republic was officially established. This constitution, although carrying many democratic ideals, granted significant powers to the president, a factor that inadvertently paved the way for Adolf Hitler's rise to power. Treaty of Versailles and its consequences. The First World War officially ended after Germany requested a ceasefire. The armistice was signed between the warring parties on November 11, 1918, marking the end of the bloody conflict. However, it was not until 7 months later, on June 28, 1919, that the Treaty of Versailles was officially signed, determining the fate of the defeated Germany. The Treaty of Versailles imposed extremely harsh terms on Germany. The most controversial provision was Article 231, commonly known as the War Guilt Clause, which placed full responsibility on Germany and forced it to bear the burden of all the losses and damages suffered by the Allied countries during the war. In addition to the psychological burden of the War Guilt Clause, the Treaty of Versailles also imposed heavy economic and territorial penalties on Germany. Germany was forced to pay a huge amount of reparations to the Allied countries, which further burdened the already devastated economy of the country. Furthermore, Germany lost significant territories, including Alsace-Lorraine to France and a portion of East Prussia, which later became the Polish Corridor, dividing East Prussia from the rest of Germany. Germany's overseas colonies were also confiscated and placed under the control of the Allied powers. The Treaty of Versailles also imposed strict limitations on the German military. The German army was completely disbanded and only allowed to maintain a small force with limited equipment to ensure domestic security. Germany was also prohibited from owning or developing heavy offensive weapons, such as tanks, fighter planes, and submarines. Additionally, Germany was banned from joining the League of Nations, a newly established international organization aimed at maintaining world peace. The Treaty of Versailles was not just a peace agreement, but also a humiliation for the German people. The harsh provisions of the treaty sowed the seeds of discontent and resentment among the German population, creating conditions for the rise of extreme nationalism and revenge. The Weimar government, established after the war, was seen as responsible for accepting the humiliating terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler and the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, cleverly exploited this discontent to propagate their extremist ideals. They spread the conspiracy theory of a stab in the back, accusing the Weimar Republic, especially left-wing parties, of betraying the country by accepting the Treaty of Versailles. According to Hitler, the Weimar government had stabbed the German army in the back by agreeing to this humiliating treaty. Economic crisis and hyperinflation. The years following the end of World War I were a period of turmoil and instability in Germany. The economy was in shambles, burdened by massive war reparations and political unrest, which plunged the country into a crisis. During the war, in order to finance the costly conflict, Germany suspended the conversion of the mark to gold and printed a large amount of cash. This, coupled with the enormous war reparations that Germany had to bear, led to hyperinflation, an economic phenomenon in which the value of the domestic currency plummeted. Austrian writer Stefan Zweig, a witness to this chaotic period, vividly described the reality of hyperinflation in Germany. A pair of shoes cost more than a fashion shoe store with 2,000 pairs of shoes before. A broken window costs more than a house before. A book costs more than a print shop with hundreds of printing presses. Hyperinflation caused severe social consequences. Hard-working German citizens, who had spent their entire lives saving money, suddenly found their hard-earned savings worthless. The wages they received at the beginning of the week were not enough to buy a loaf of bread by the end of the week. Discontent and despair spread throughout society, creating conditions for the rise of extremist movements. The Social Democratic Party, SPD, which held power after the war, struggled to maintain stability amidst social unrest and the emergence of opposing political parties. The Independent Social Democratic Party, USPD, a left-wing party, and the German National People's Party, DNVP, a nationalist party, gained increasing support from disillusioned German citizens with the Weimar government. The year 1923 witnessed an escalation of political violence in Germany. In October 1923, a group of communists launched an armed uprising in Hamburg, known as the Hamburg Uprising, with the aim of overthrowing the government. The uprising was quickly suppressed, but it revealed deep-seated instability within German society. Just a month later, on November 8, 1923 in Munich, Hitler and the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, carried out a bold attempt to seize power, known as the Beer Hall Putsch. On the evening of November 8th, Hitler and his followers stormed a government officials' meeting at a beer hall in Munich, declaring the revolution had begun. The next day, Hitler and his supporters marched towards the center of Munich, where they clashed with the police and the military. The clash resulted in the deaths of 16 Nazi members and 4 police officers. The coup was quickly suppressed. Hitler was arrested and tried for treason. Despite being sentenced to 5 years in prison, he only served 9 months. Just a month later, on November 8, 1923 in Munich, Hitler and the National, although it failed, The Beer Hall Putsch marked a significant turning point in Hitler's political career. Hitler's trial brought him and the Nazi Party national attention. During his imprisonment, Hitler wrote the book Mein Kampf, My Struggle, outlining his political ideology and action plan. Hitler realized that armed revolution was not an effective path to power in Germany. From then on, he decided to pursue a legal path, exploiting public discontent and the democratic political system to bring the Nazi Party to power. In the peaceful 1920s, amidst intense political and economic storms, the Weimar Republic still found moments of calm to recover and develop. By the end of 1923, the last hyperinflation had been brought under control. The introduction of the Rentenmark, a new currency tightly controlled by the government in terms of issuance, helped stabilize prices and restore people's confidence in the financial system. From 1924 to 1928, Germany entered a period of relative political stability. Coalition governments with the participation of three centrist parties governed the country in a gentle and cautious manner. However, behind the seemingly peaceful political landscape, there was a quiet but dangerous rise of extremist forces. Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, was significantly increasing its seats in the Reichstag, signaling potential instability in the future. The Great Depression. The short-lived stability of the Weimar Republic was like a flickering candle amidst a rapidly approaching storm, extinguished by the Great Depression in 2008-1929. Germany's economy was already fragile and heavily reliant on foreign loans from the Dawes Plan, which was shaken by the shockwaves from the U.S. stock market. When the United States, the pillar of the global financial system, could no longer provide financial support to Germany, the Weimar economy plunged into a deep abyss. Inflation once again erupted fiercely, swallowing the value of the currency and pushing people into dire straits. Unemployment rates skyrocketed. Millions of Germans lost their jobs and fell into destitution. The coalition government led by Hermann Müller of the Social Democratic Party, SPD, collapsed under the pressure of the crisis and internal disagreements. Heinrich Brüning, the leader of the Center Party, was tasked with forming a new government in this turbulent moment. Aware of the urgent situation, Brüning did not hesitate to invoke the emergency powers of the president to pass budgets and avoid prolonged debates in the Reichstag. This action, although controversial in terms of legality and the risk of abuse of power, was justified as necessary to deal with the increasingly severe economic crisis. However, few could have anticipated that this emergency government would be used by Adolf Hitler to strangle democracy. The 1930 election sounded the alarm for the ominous future of the Weimar Republic. Adolf Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, attracted the support of desperate and dissatisfied Germans. From a modest 2.6% in the previous election, the NSDAP won 18.3% of the votes, equivalent to 95 seats in the Reichstag. Not only the NSDAP, but the Communist Party of Germany, KPD, also achieved significant success, gaining an additional 23 seats in the Reichstag. However, deep divisions between the KPD and SPD prevented the left-wing bloc from forming a united front to counter the rising wave of fascism. In the following years, Germany sank deep into economic, social, and political crises. In 1931, the number of unemployed reached 4.3 million, and by 1932, this figure had skyrocketed to 6 million, equivalent to a quarter of the adult population of Germany. Riots became a familiar scene across cities. The Reichstag fire. In 1932, the federal election was held. This time, the Nazi Party made a historic leap, winning 37.3% of the votes, a significant increase from the previous election's 18.3%. This result made the Nazi Party the largest party in the Reichstag, opening the door to power for Adolf Hitler. On January 30, 1933, Hitler officially became the Chancellor of Germany. Immediately upon taking power, Hitler requested President Paul von Hindenburg to dissolve the Reichstag and organize a new election. Hindenburg agreed to Hitler's request, and the election was scheduled for March 5, 1933. However, 6 days before the election, a shocking event occurred that completely changed the political landscape of Germany: the Reichstag fire. On the night of February 27, 1933, the German Reichstag building suddenly caught fire. The terrifying flames almost completely destroyed the building. This event, known as the Reichstag fire, became a turning point in Hitler's consolidation of power. Not missing the golden opportunity, Hitler and the Nazi Party quickly blamed the communists for the fire. Taking advantage of the fear and confusion of the people, Hitler persuaded President Hindenburg to issue the Reichstag fire decree. This decree, issued on February 28, 1933, suspended basic civil liberties, allowing the government to arrest and detain suspected individuals without trial who were believed to be connected to the fire. Thousands of communists, including leaders of the Communist Party of Germany, KPD, were arrested and imprisoned under brutal conditions. The election still took place on March 5th. The paramilitary forces of the Nazi Party were mobilized to prevent any opposition activities. Despite the efforts of opposition parties, the NSDAP still achieved a resounding victory, winning 43.9% of the votes. At this point, Hitler had complete control of the Reichstag. On March 23, 1933, the German Reichstag, under Hitler's control, passed the Enabling Act. This act, passed with the support of the majority of Nazi Party members and some other members of the Reichstag, allowed Hitler and his government to enact laws without the approval of the Reichstag. The German Reichstag granted Hitler absolute power, allowing him to enact laws and rule the country without the consent of the Reichstag or the President. The Enabling Act marked the end of the Weimar Republic and ushered in the darkest chapter in German history, the Third Reich. The perfect storm. Continuing a collapsed empire, the Weimar Republic had to bear the remnants of war, a crippled economy, and a deeply divided society. Amidst political, social, and economic instability, Germany's first democracy never developed strong. The constant internal turmoil and conflicts inadvertently created conditions for the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. One of the critical weaknesses of the Weimar Republic was the internal division within the right-wing forces. From the early days of the Republic, the conflict between the two largest political parties of the right-wing faction, the Social Democratic Party of Germany, SPD, and the Communist Party of Germany, KPD, became irreparable, especially after the assassination of the two communist leaders, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. This division severely weakened the power of the right-wing faction, preventing them from mobilizing forces to resist the rise of fascism. The Weimar Constitution contained fatal loopholes that inadvertently paved the way for the collapse of the very system it created. The most harmful provision, and also the most crucial provision in Hitler's rise to power, was the power of the president to issue emergency decrees without the consent of the Reichstag. Hitler exploited this provision to issue the Reichstag fire decree while laying the groundwork for the Enabling Act, a law that officially granted Hitler absolute power. The Treaty of Versailles is also considered one of the main causes of the collapse of the Weimar Republic. This treaty, with its harsh terms imposed on defeated Germany, pushed the already crippled German economy to the brink of collapse. Extreme nationalism rose, and Hitler cleverly exploited this resentment to incite the Germans' hatred towards the Allied countries. Finally, the disillusionment of the German people with the young and inexperienced democracy contributed to Hitler's rise. The Weimar Republic failed to meet the people's expectations of a just and prosperous society. In that context, Hitler, with his persuasive skills and promises of a powerful Germany, appeared as a savior in the eyes of desperate Germans.